Picture this: you're running a race that's not just long, it's 100 miles of pure agony. By mile 70, your body is screaming, your feet are shredded, and your kidneys are shutting down. Most people would stop, anyone would stop, but not David Goggins. He kept going step by step until he crossed the finish line. Why? Because he discovered something most people never realize. When you think you've hit your limit, you're really just getting started. Goggins wasn't always this way. There was a time when he was 300 pounds, stuck in a dead end job and haunted by his past. He was the guy who quit when things got hard, who let pain define his life. But one moment changed everything. He saw a Navy SEAL on TV and thought, what if I could be that guy? It sounded impossible, but something deep inside him whispered, try. This story isn't just about Goggins, it's about you. What would happen if you stopped listening to the voice that says quit? What if you pushed past every limit you've set for yourself? This is Overcoming Limits, the key to achieving the impossible. Part 1: The breaking point. How far can you go when your body screams enough, but your mind whispers, not yet? The line between comfort and growth is razor thin, yet it's where greatness begins. David Goggins, a man once weighed down by doubt and physical limitations, discovered this truth the hard way. Long before becoming the beacon of resilience he is today, Goggins was an individual like any other, ordinary, flawed, and uncertain. Growing up in a turbulent environment, David faced systemic racism, poverty, and a strained family dynamic. The weight of these challenges forged an internal narrative that whispered, "You're not enough." Each setback seemed to confirm this belief, nudging him further into mediocrity. By the time he hit his 20s, he was 300 pounds, working a dead end job, and had little hope for the future. But the real turning point came one fateful night. While flipping through TV channels, Goggins stumbled upon a documentary about Navy SEALs, an elite group known for their mental toughness and physical endurance. He was captivated. These men seemed unbreakable, operating on a level far beyond human limitations. Deep down, a spark ignited. He thought, what if I could be like them? What if I could rewrite my story? The question haunted him for weeks, yet self doubt crept in. How could an overweight, unmotivated man like him transform into someone capable of surviving the brutal SEAL training known as Bud's basic underwater demolition SEAL? The task seemed impossible, but David realized something profound: limits are illusions. If he wanted to change his life, he'd have to break through every wall he'd built around himself. And so he started. In the beginning, running a single mile felt unbearable. His lungs burned, his legs ached, and his inner voice taunted, "You'll never make it." But David persisted. He pushed past the pain, refusing to give in. Day after day he ran. It wasn't just about the miles, it was about proving to himself that pain was temporary and that quitting was a choice. By the time he called the Navy SEAL recruiter, David had lost over 100 pounds in 3 months. But the journey was far from over. Part 2: The Crucible of Pain. What would you do if every step forward felt like a battle against yourself? David Goggins was no stranger to hardship, but Navy SEAL training would redefine the very concept of suffering. With his drastic weight loss and newfound determination, he qualified for BUDS. However, nothing could have prepared him for the physical and mental trials ahead. The training was relentless. The instructors pushed every candidate to their breaking point and beyond, testing not only their physical endurance but their willpower. Each day felt like a war of attrition. The cold Pacific waters sapped their strength, while endless push ups, log carries, and swims drained their energy reserves. For Goggins, the most grueling challenge was Hell Week, a 5-day crucible designed to weed out the weak. By the third day of Hell Week, most of his peers had rung the bell, a symbol of quitting. Sleep deprived, drenched, and battered, Goggins fought an inner dialogue of self doubt. His legs cramped, his hands bled, and his body begged him to stop. But amid the chaos, a thought crystallized in his mind: pain is just weakness leaving the body. Goggins began to see pain differently, not as a barrier, but as an opportunity. He realized that the human mind often the humor before the body truly needs to. Instead of succumbing, he chose to lean into the discomfort. He found solace in the fact that every grueling moment was molding him into something stronger, someone unstoppable. The other candidates noticed his unrelenting spirit. Goggins began to inspire those around him not with words, but through his actions. He refused to quit, no matter how daunting the obstacle. It wasn't just about surviving Hell Week, it was about proving to himself that he could achieve the impossible. However, his journey wasn't without setbacks. Goggins faced medical rollbacks, injuries that forced him to repeat sections of training. For most, this would have been the final straw, a legitimate excuse to quit, but not for David. He embraced each failure as a stepping stone, refusing to let circumstances dictate his fate. By the end of training, Goggins emerged not just as a Navy SEAL, but as a man transformed. He had learned the power of mental toughness, a lesson that would guide him through the rest of his life. But his story didn't end there. If anything, this was just the beginning. Part 3: The 40% Rule. What if we discovered that when you think you're done, you're only 40% of the way there? After completing Navy SEAL training, David Goggins didn't rest on his achievements. He had forged himself into one of the toughest men on the planet, but he wasn't satisfied. His life became a mission to inspire others and push the boundaries of human potential. It was during this time that Goggins solidified one of his core beliefs: the 40% rule. The idea is simple but revolutionary. When you feel like you've reached your limit, whether in a workout, a job, or a personal struggle, you've only tapped into 40% of your true capacity. The remaining 60% lies dormant, waiting for you to unlock it. Goggins realized this during some of his most grueling experiences, including ultra endurance races that would leave most people broken. One such race was the infamous Badwater 135, often called the toughest foot race on Earth. Spanning 135 miles through California's Death Valley, where temperatures soar to 130 degrees, this race pushes even elite athletes to their limits. Goggins entered the race not as a seasoned runner, but as a man willing to endure the unimaginable to prove what the human body and mind could achieve. The race began smoothly, but by mile 70, Goggins began to rebel. His feet were covered in blisters, his knees throbbed, and he was dangerously dehydrated. Most would have quit. Instead, Goggins tapped into the 40% rule. He reminded himself why he started. This wasn't just a race, it was a test of willpower. Pain was inevitable, but quitting was optional. Step by step, he forced himself to continue, breaking the race into smaller, manageable goals. First, he aimed to reach the next aid station, then the next mile, and before long, he crossed the finish line, proving once again that limits are self imposed. This principle didn't just apply to running. Goggins began using it in every aspect of his life, from grueling training sessions to his relentless pursuit of personal growth. He shared the 40% rule with others, challenging them to dig deeper, push harder, and never settle for less than their best. But the lessons Goggins taught weren't just about physical endurance, they were about resilience, accountability, and the power of a determined mind. His philosophy resonated with people from all walks of life, earning him a reputation as one of the most motivational figures of his generation. Still, Goggins wasn't content to rest on his laurels. There were more races to run, more challenges to conquer, and more lives to inspire. He was just getting started. Part 4: Living with Accountability Hope. What if the hardest person to confront was the one staring back at you in the mirror. While David Goggins' physical feats were extraordinary, his true power came from his relentless commitment to accountability. He coined the term the accountability mirror to describe the honest self reflection that propelled him to greatness. For Goggins, this mirror wasn't just a physical object, it was a metaphor for the brutal truths we often avoid confronting about ourselves. Long before he became the man who could run 100-mile races, Goggins was the teenager who failed tests, avoided challenges, and blamed the world for his shortcomings. But he eventually realized that change would only come if he took ownership of his life. He began a nightly ritual of standing in front of his mirror and calling himself out on his excuses. At first, it was painful. He acknowledged every weakness, every missed opportunity, and every moment he chose comfort over growth. But with each brutal truth, he wrote down a solution, a small, actionable goal he could tackle the next day. Over time, these micro goals added up, creating momentum that reshaped his entire life. This practice didn't stop when Goggins became a Navy SEAL or an endurance athlete. If anything, his standards grew even higher. He held himself accountable for every slip, every failure, and every unfulfilled potential. He embraced the discomfort because he understood that growth lay on the other side of it. One of Goggins' most powerful lessons came when he failed to meet his own expectations. During a 100-mile race in San Diego, his body began shutting down. Severe dehydration, kidney issues, and sheer exhaustion forced him to stop. For most, simply attempting such a feat would be enough, but Goggins didn't see it that way. He saw the failure as an opportunity to improve, to train harder, and to return stronger. This mindset wasn't limited to personal goals. Goggins used the accountability mirror to inspire others to face their own fears and excuses. He reminded people that the path to greatness isn't glamorous, it's messy, painful, and full of setbacks. But it's also where true growth happens. He became a beacon of accountability in a world where it's easy to point fingers or settle for mediocrity. His message was clear: if you want to achieve the impossible, you must first confront yourself. But accountability wasn't the end of Goggins' journey. It was merely the foundation for a life of resilience and relentless pursuit of excellence. The question now wasn't if he could overcome his limits, but how much further he could push them. Part 5: Becoming Unstoppable. What if the greatest triumph wasn't in reaching the summit, but in proving there are no summits at all? David Goggins didn't just transform his own life, he rewrote what it means to be human. His journey wasn't about medals or accolades, it was about showing that anyone, no matter their circumstances, could overcome the impossible. But Goggins didn't stop there. His mission became clear: to inspire others to push past their own perceived limits and embrace a life of relentless growth. After conquering ultra endurance races, setting world records, and serving as one of the few individuals to lead Army SEAL, Army Ranger, and Air Force Tactical Air Control training, Goggins could have retired as a legend. But for him, success wasn't a finish line. Each achievement only fueled his desire to do more. Goggins took his message to the world, becoming an author and motivational speaker. His book Can't Hurt Me became a global phenomenon, detailing his incredible journey and the mental strategies that enabled his transformation. The book wasn't just a story, it was a call to action. Goggins challenged readers to face their own pain, embrace discomfort, and adopt what he called a calloused mind. A calloused mind, much like a calloused hand, is built through repeated exposure to hardship. Goggins explained that every time you endure difficulty and refuse to quit, you build mental toughness. This toughness becomes a shield, allowing you to face greater challenges with resilience and determination. But Goggins' philosophy went beyond grit. He emphasized the importance of purpose. He encouraged others to identify the why, the driving force that would sustain them when the journey became unbearable. For Goggins, his why was simple yet profound: to show others what's possible when you refuse to settle for less than your best. Even with his unmatched accomplishments, Goggin remained humble. He often reminded people that he wasn't special, he had no superhuman abilities. His success came from hard work, discipline, and an unshakable belief in his potential. This message resonated deeply, inspiring countless individuals to confront their own limits and strive for greatness. Today, Goggins continues to embody his message, whether he's running 240-mile ultramarathons, speaking to packed auditoriums, or training in solitude. He remains a symbol of what's possible when you refuse to quit. His legacy isn't just in the records he's broken or the races he's finished, it's in the lives he's touched and the minds he's awakened. His story proves one undeniable truth: we are all capable of achieving the impossible. The only limits that exist are the ones we place on ourselves. And in the end, the question isn't whether you'll face challenges, it's whether you'll rise to meet them. As Goggins himself would say, stay hard.